Oh, this is gonna feel like Christmas. Oh yeah, look at that thing. Oh man, it looks so good. You know, it's been 5 months since I pulled this engine out of my Fastback because I had to get everything prepped and get it sent off for paint. And you can probably tell the weather looks fantastic out there. I want to get this back in the car. And I'm hoping by the end of this episode we can get this thing fired up so I can go for a drive. What's up guys, my name is Andy. I need to get my 347 stroker back in my Mustang. It's been sitting all winter and everything looks fine as much as I can tell. I had it covered. It's sitting here in the garage so it was protected. You know, I don't have any mice problems or bugs or whatever. Wasn't sitting out in the rain or anything like that. There's no rust, which there shouldn't have been, but everything, it's just a little dusty, but that was probably when it was when I took it out of the car. So what I want to do is I'm going to just go through and get this installed back in the car. I recently did a full wire job on this, rewired the whole car and then just put some new carpet in. So now the interior is all put back together. That's all done. I'm ready to go. I'm happy there. Everything's ready. All I need to do really is just put the drivetrain in and then we can go. So let's get to it. I needed to do a few things first before I get this engine installed back in the car. I needed to replace the lower radiator hose. I had a split in it from when I uninstalled it from the car, so I got a new piece for that. And then, because I'm not running the heater in my car right now, I'm going to install just a bypass hose from the intake manifold to the water pump and just cutting a piece for that. This is my first mistake. The headers on these engines, and particularly this engine bay, it's notorious for not having a lot of room. You don't have any space to do anything. So I thought I'd get ahead of the game by installing the header first on the driver's side before I get this installed back in the car. That ended up not working out like I wanted. You'll see that here coming up, but I thought I was outsmarting everything by putting this on first. Now as I pick up the engine with the cherry picker, you'll notice that when I disconnect it from the engine stand, it twists 90 degrees to the side. This actually ended up causing a problem because I can't install the engine with it like this because I have to twist the engine and hold it in place as I try to drop it down, and it just wasn't going to work. You know, I tried to reposition and stuff, and you know, I'm just going to have to take it back out and put it back on the engine stand and shorten up that link by one link so that it would spin it the right way. Now that I got this hooked up like I want, you'll notice another theme, stubbornness. Trying to put this in without taking the hood off. The hood's aligned right now and I don't want to go through that whole process of realigning the hood. So I'm doing everything I can to keep the hood on while I drop this engine. There's not a lot of clearance. Towels on things and back and forth, move it forward a half an inch, drop it a half an inch, that kind of a thing. So this is where I noticed that it wasn't going to fit with the header in place. The export brace is on the car, and again, another thing I didn't want to take off. So I went through the process of removing the header so that I could drop the engine down to the point where the header would be below the export brace, and then I could put the header back on. And this took a little bit of back and forth testing and trying to pick, no, still not quite enough. And then just get it down just enough so I can still reach all the bolts and stuff for the header, but it also clears everything that I need it to clear. And this is something that everybody that's done this is just familiar with how difficult these headers can be to install and trying to reach all the bolts. And these headers I have here are pretty good, but it's still a pain to get to everything. So now I'm going to install the passenger header, again taking advantage of the engine being a little bit higher, a little easier to get to these bolts. I could have done it with the engine in place because the passenger side is a little easier, but I figured I'd just take care of it now. Now, as I begin to lower the engine, I have a couple of problems where the oil pan has got like a T-shape on the bottom, and it gets hung up on the sway bar, and then it gets hung up on the passenger side motor mount, and then the the back of the driver's side header's getting hung up on the steering box, and I just have to go back and forth and pry on a little bit, drop it down a half an inch, move it back half an inch, that kind of a thing, until I can get everything to fit in place. This wasn't if the headers weren't there, it would have been a little bit easier, but really I still had a problem with the oil pan catching on stuff down below. And I'm putting in the bolts on the underside of the engine mount and get that done so that I can let this off the hoist and the engine will just sit there. Now that I got the engine installed, it's almost kind of downhill from here. Getting that engine in is a little bit of a pain, just trying to fit everything in the engine bay without taking the hood off or the export brace off. But now I can, again, hook up the radiator and get that stuff done and just work one way around through all the rest of the parts. Now, installing the transmission, this is one of the things where if you're going to have a helper, this is probably the best time to have it. It's just a little cumbersome to get this in there. But out of all the times I've ever done transmissions on these Mustangs, this was the easiest one to do. It just went right in. Usually I don't have everything lined up, or I don't have the engine tilted back enough, or the transmission tilted up enough, or whatever it is. And it just went together this round. And I must have cashed in all my chips on this one, because this one was really easy to do. And then you just prop it up in place and put the cross member on there, and it just went really easy, really fast, and it was a nice break from the normal. And just a couple of the final things on the side transmission. You got the speedometer cable, and then I have to hook up the hydraulic slave cylinder for the clutch. And then the last little bit is just the reverse switch. This wiring part, again, this is not really exciting. Thankfully, it's all sped up, but hooking up these wires, again, it's not exciting at all. And putting this loom on there, actually, I was using that split loom stuff, the nylon. While it's kind of a pain because it wraps around itself, it doesn't cut up your fingers. So I did find that I like this nylon loom better than the typical plastic loom that we see all the time. And just hooking up the parking brake. I always get this hook spring backwards. I think the last time I had it flipped the other direction. I can't ever remember which way it goes. Now that everything's done underneath the car, we can come back up on top of the engine here and get everything all buttoned up and finished. When putting these nuts and washers on to hold this on, I always drop one down below. It's amazing. I should just keep that little tool out so I know I'm going to drop something at the bottom every time. Ooh, look at that awesome throttle linkage. I bet you can find one of those at KruseBuilt.com if you were looking. I saved this part of the wiring harness for end because I wanted it to match up to the lengths of where the things needed to go. Everything else in the wiring in the car is done, but I saved this for the end because I got to cut the wires to length and make sure that they fit appropriately and go to the right spot. You'll notice as I run this stuff through the loom and kind of start to get things taped off, it's not exciting at all. That's why I didn't really go through that part on the previous video where I was doing the wiring install. It's just not exciting. But these instructions that come with the kit are fantastic. 11 by 17 color pages, everything's spelled out, written out, and good pictures of what is what. And I really, really like this kit. It made it very, very easy to do the whole wiring in the car with the way they did that in their instructions. I'm trying to cover each wire with the split loom stuff or that nylon loom and put the shrink tape over everything. Just trying to make it look really nice because this is the wiring harness you're going to see. Everything else is tucked behind panels and stuff like that. So I was trying to make this look as good as possible. And the last piece to install was the shifter boot and shifter lever for the transmission. Everything else is done, and I put fluids in, but I don't show that on the video. All right, guys, I got everything all done. Everything's all buttoned up. I ran out of time yesterday. I did get the fluids in the car, but I had a date with the wife last night, so I didn't want to miss that. But we're ready to start. What I want to do is I'm going to pull the wire off the coil here. So what I can do is I can turn it over, and that will help prime the fuel. It's been 5 months since this car has ran, so the fuel probably isn't any good, or at least the octane isn't as good. I can deal with that later. Let's see here. We've got everything all in place. Everything's ready to go. As I'm looking at everything, I'm going through my head, make sure that everything's tight and everything's in place. I think we're good. What I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to turn it over and just kind of get some fuel primed in this system, and then I think we can put the coil back on and turn the engine over and get it fired up. That's a good sign. That's a good sign for a couple reasons. One, remember I just rewired this car and everything, it works. I was able, before I put the engine in the other day, I made sure all the lights worked. I just went through the various things that I could check without the engine in the car to make sure that everything was working and the lights were working and all that kind of stuff, interior lights and everything. But the fact that it just turns over, that's a good sign. Now, we haven't changed anything with the engine or the drivetrain or anything like that. I just pulled it out and put it back in because I just got the car painted, but the wiring was 100% redone. So the fact that it turns over makes me feel good. So I'm not seeing any fuel in the fuel bowl here. Get this back on here. The choke is closed. That's good because that's also another thing that I added was that electric choke circuit in this new wiring setup here. Yeah, we got fuel in there. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, so the engine fires up. That's good in terms of the electrical part, the wiring part of it. That was my concern, just making sure that I got everything right. The only thing I'm noticing is my water temperature gauge is all the way over at, I don't know, 210 degrees or something like that, right when the engine fires up. And my oil pressure gauge isn't even reading. I wonder if I've got those wires switched on here. I wonder if my oil sending unit wire and my water sending unit wire are backwards, because I should have oil pressure right away, but no real temp yet, right? So I'll have to trace that down and see what's going on there. That's the downside with when you rewire, you've got, I put everything away. Now that's kind of a taboo thing, right? To wire everything up and put everything away and tuck it all away so that, you know, when you go to fire it up, if there's any problems, you got to take it all back apart or whatever. So I'm gonna have to find out what's going on with those two circuits. But the tach is working, the voltage, the voltmeter is working, or the voltage gauge is working. The fuel gauge is really low, but I don't remember how much fuel I had in here. I don't think I had a lot of fuel in here when I took everything apart because I knew the car was gonna be sitting for a while, so I could put some more gas in there and see if that changes the gauge. Yay, okay. That is, that feels so good. It just works, right? It just runs, and more or less on the first try, right? I'm excited. Cool, so I'm gonna get those two things figured out. It's gonna be another beautiful day, so I'm anxious to get the car out and go for a drive and see how she does. So, all right guys, that's it. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up, and if you subscribe, I appreciate it because it helps my channel out, and we'll see you in the next one.